It was 4:24 in the morning, and I was sitting there in the dark writing everything down because we were leaving at 11 and I couldn't sleep. In 6 hours, I was getting into a car with my ex, a man I hadn't seen since the breakup, and driving 2 hours into the woods. Just the two of us, in a tent. I kept telling myself I trusted him. I did trust him. He was smart, calculated, someone who'd gone camping dozens of times. But I also knew that trusting someone and being ready to be that close to them again are two completely different things. Let me tell you how we got there. I met him on a dating app in October of 2023. He was 30 from Romania. I was 26 from Chicago. I mentioned that, the backgrounds, the distance between where we came from, because it matters later. Our first date didn't end. That's the only way I can describe it. The energy between us was magnetic in a way I hadn't felt before. And by the end of the night, I was staying over, which wasn't something I'd normally do. We watched a movie. We cuddled. And when he whispered something in my ear, something about how he wanted to be close to me, I didn't pull away. I woke up the next morning fully prepared to slip out and pretend nothing happened. He made me breakfast. I was shocked. I had my whole exit strategy ready. Work out, go home, move on. And he made me breakfast. By November, we were falling for each other in a real way. His birthday was November 11th, and I wanted it to mean something. I found a good Italian restaurant. Genuinely good, not cheap. Because I knew Italian food was his favorite. I had custom tennis balls made with his name on one side and a word I used to call him on the other. My lover. That's what I called him in texts. At dinner that night, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I hadn't brought it up once. I'd been taking things slow on purpose, letting feelings develop, waiting to make sure it was mutual. When he asked, I got butterflies, real ones, and I said yes. Here's the thing about us. On paper, we looked good. In practice, we were two very closed-off people trying to build something open, and neither of us was quite willing to go first. He wasn't a sharer. Getting anything personal out of him took patience. I'm intuitive. I pick up on things. I read people. And I could tell there was a lot underneath the surface he wasn't letting me touch. So I started pulling back too, because that's what you do when someone keeps the door mostly closed. You stop knocking as hard. Our communication suffered for it. I'd suggest things, couples activities, an arcade, games we could play together. He was a gamer, big into Zelda. But when I suggested we do something together, he was usually too tired. I wasn't a gamer. I crocheted. I graphic designed. I ran. We had different worlds, and I genuinely didn't mind that. What bothered me was that I kept reaching across the gap and he didn't always reach back. He could also be sharp when we argued. Sharp in a way that landed. And then there was the ex situation. Before we made things official, I noticed the signs of her still being present at his place. A pair of shoes, a key she still had, her pet rabbit still living there. I pointed it out. I didn't press it because we weren't official yet, and I had my own unfinished business from a past relationship. So I wasn't in a position to throw stones, but I noticed. I filed it away. Looking back, I think we both carried someone else into what we were building. We were both more unfinished than we'd admitted. What kept me there was the quiet evidence that he was paying attention. He remembered my goals and asked about them. He brought me flowers on Valentine's Day because he'd noticed I liked them. He made sure when I came over there was a toothbrush for me, that I could shower, that I felt taken care of. We had Thanksgiving at his friend's house. I brought a charcuterie board and wine. Christmas was genuinely good. He got me a watch, a scarf, a perfume I loved. I crocheted him a hat and baked him cookies because I knew he liked sweets. We exchanged gifts and it felt real. He made me black coffee every morning. He knew that was my favorite. He also sometimes made me waffles when he knew I was on a low-carb diet. Small thing, but it added to this feeling that some version of me, my actual preferences, my actual needs, wasn't fully landing with him. We broke up in February. It wasn't clean. One of his reasons was that he was thinking about going back to Romania by the end of the year. His mother had passed away from cancer when he was young. His relationship with his father was fractured. Deep resentment around the choices his father made during her illness. His sister had moved on, built her own family. There wasn't much pulling him back, but there wasn't nothing either. I understood the homesickness. I understood missing a place. But he'd been in this country 4 years. He was making good money. I didn't think going back was actually the plan. I thought it was something else. He told me he couldn't see a future with me, that I'd never be happy with him. He was cold about it. The kind of cold that makes you wonder if the warmth was ever really there. I'd broken up with him a couple of times myself during those months. I won't pretend otherwise. So I understood, at least partially, where his certainty came from. I still disagreed with how he said it, but I heard it, and I moved on. I really thought that was the end. Then on July 13th, my birthday, he texted me, "Happy birthday," out of nowhere after months of silence. I didn't think he'd even remembered. In September, I texted him asking if he'd gone back to Romania yet. He said no. I asked why. He said he wasn't ready. We caught up a little. The conversation dropped naturally, and I let it go. I figured that was the closure we were going to get. A week or so later, I was on the Chicago lakefront. I run out there all the time. It's part of my routine. He texted me out of nowhere. More running, less texting. He'd seen me from his bike. I hadn't seen him at all. We live close to each other and almost never cross paths. And there we were, both on the same lakefront, just missing each other. We talked again. The conversation dropped again. I let it go again. Then, a week after that, he asked if he could stop by my bar for a drink. I said yes. Then he said he was just kidding. He was in Texas for work. But if he'd been in town, he would have come. I told him that meant he'd been thinking about me. He said yes, that ever since I'd reached out and he'd seen me on the lakefront, I'd been on his mind. He asked if I missed him. I told him the truth. I'd thought about him. But he was such a cold person that eventually I got used to not being around him. Missing him became something I could set down. He heard that. We talked about what went wrong, really talked. He said he'd felt like I wasn't into him, that I wasn't initiating touch, wasn't reaching for him, and something clicked when he said it. Because I am a very physical person. I love touching the people I care about, but I'm also shy in a way that takes time to dissolve. I was holding back. I was waiting until I felt safe enough to stop holding back. And by the time I got there, he'd already decided I didn't want him. The times I did touch him, he said he was very turned on. He just didn't know that was me trying. He also told me he was working on being less serious, more open. I believed him. I'd seen flashes of who he was when his guard came down. The mornings, the small rememberings, the moments he'd talked about his mother. about the fear of building a life somewhere that didn't quite feel like his yet. That version of him was worth something. There was one night I kept thinking about. I'd called off work on a whim, and I suggested we go to the coffee shop where we first met. When we got there, a band was playing. I was happy, genuinely, visibly happy. And I was touching him, leaning in, being fully myself. He looked at me that night and said he wished I'd been that way the whole relationship. I hadn't realized how much I'd been dimming it down. So when he texted me on a Tuesday, out of nowhere, proposing we go camping Wednesday morning and come back Friday, 2 days, 60 miles outside the city, just the two of us in a tent, I said yes. He loves camping. I haven't been since I was a Girl Scout. He was planning everything. He'd be driving. For 2 hours each way, I'd be completely in his hands, in his car, going somewhere I'd never been, relying on him entirely. And I was sitting in the dark at 4:24 in the morning, writing all of it down, because I couldn't sleep and leaving it in my head wasn't working. I'm a nervous wreck, I'll say it plainly. But here's the other true thing. I trust him, not blindly, based on evidence. He's smart. He's careful. He's been camping more times than I can count. He's not reckless with things he knows. And maybe, we're both a little more ready now than we were the first time. I just overthink. I always have. Sometimes I act on nothing. Sometimes I act on everything. And right now, at 4 in the morning, I'm trying to figure out which one this is. 11 a.m. We leave at 11. What I know now that I didn't know then is that two people can genuinely care about each other and still miss each other completely. Not because the feeling isn't real, but because neither person knows how to make it visible. I thought he didn't want me to reach for him. He thought I wasn't reaching. We were both wrong about the same thing at the same time. The ex stuff, the communication walls, the moments I broke up with him and the moments he was cold. None of that was nothing. It all meant something. But underneath it was something that also meant something. He remembered my birthday after months of silence. He saw me on the lakefront and couldn't stop thinking about it. He texted me from Texas to tell me he would have come by. People don't do that for people who don't matter. I'm not going into those woods with expectations. I'm going with an open mind and nothing forced. We'll see what 2 days reveals. About him, about me. About whether we're actually different now, or just the same two guarded people hoping something has changed. My gut brought me to him once before. My gut is the reason I'm going back. If you've ever stood at the edge of something that felt equal parts right and terrifying, and gone anyway, drop a comment and tell me what happened. I'd love to know. If this story hit something for you, a like helps someone else find it. And subscribe, because I'll be here when there's more to tell.